Hello everybody, and welcome back to my sunroom here in East Tennessee on this beautiful September day. Fall is just around the corner, and as you all know, I have been doing a lot of repotting on my collection, getting them ready for the next growing season. And several of you have asked me to do a follow-up on some of the repots that I've shown you. So I thought this would be a really good day to do that. And speaking of repotting, my sponsor is the Orchid Supply Store. I use their bark, their moss, their pots, everything that I use with my orchids comes from the Orchid Supply Store. And if you use my coupon code, Amy, you will receive a 12% viewers discount. And don't forget, they also have these all-in-one pots, which I think are wonderful. If you get to the end of your repotting and you just have one more to do and you don't have any more supplies, then you can just call and order a pot in one, which I think is so smart. And so many of you have asked me about my two Cattleyas. The one on the right is in New Zealand sphagnum moss, and then the one on the left is in medium and small chunk orchiata bark. I repotted these about 4 weeks ago. These are my Cattleya Memoria Vitally Limelight. It's the green with the red lip. They have grown so very well. The new growths that were just starting when I repotted them, look. Yes. This is amazing. Now, the interesting thing is, as you all know, I've never grown a Cattleya in bark. And I thought, okay, let's just give it a try. And when I first started watering this one, I had to water it about every 3 or 4 days. And then it got to a point where the next week I watered it every 5 days. Now I'm up to once a week. So these are staying hydrated well. The one in moss is just doing beautifully. This is the one that hardly had any roots, and as you see, it's just the new growth on that is amazing. So 4 weeks after that repot, that was a success. So I think these Cattleyas are so beautiful. And the one that is in the moss, the care on this one has been very, very easy. I water it, fertilize it once a week. Of course, I fertilize it every time I water right now because look at all the new growth. So I want to make sure that I keep ahead of all of that growth. It's just absolutely beautiful. Easy care. And several of you have asked me about my Phal Maturo King Bellina. As you all know, I got her back in June from Hauserman Orchids, and she has a spike. She wasn't even supposed to spike until this time next year. So I am just, wow, I'm singing the Hallelujah chorus. The root system on this one looks really good. I put her in small orchiata bark and she has just taken off. Okay, this is what the root system looks like after being in small orchiata bark for 3 months. Just a juvenile plant, very, very young plant. Look at all these roots. So I'm very proud of her. Look at her leaves, how pretty and green. I just love the shade of green those leaves are. So I'm very proud of the growth I've gotten from this orchid. And I'll show you a close-up of that spike. I got so excited when I found this spike a few weeks ago. Everybody in my house knew about it immediately. And of course, you know, they're used to the orchid spiking, and I said, no, you don't understand. This is the first spike on my Bellina, so got to share this with you all. And I water her every 3 days. Actually, she gets fertilized every 3 days, and then like every 4th watering, I'll just run plain water through her pot. But she gets watered, fertilized every 3 days. And here is my beautiful star orchid that I did the repotting on in fir bark and moss in that a moss sandwich. Reagan 1980 left me that little comment about that repotting being a moss sandwich, and I thought that was just really cute. So thank you for that. That was just so cute. Okay, here we go. Root system looks fantastic. And the really good thing about this is you don't use much water at all when you are watering in a setup like this. It's more like a moss setup. I don't use much water. I very cautiously water this, actually, the same as my moss orchids. So if you're looking for a setup that requires less water than a big old soak, then that is a really, really good way I've found to grow orchids. As a matter of fact, my miniatures that I had back in waterculture in June, remember I told you that I put those in some small orchiata bark. I was watering them every 3 days. Let me show you one of my minis. Okay, this is Phal Lawrence Tahiti Sunset, the smaller one. And I had this one in small orchiata bark after having it in waterculture for about a month. The root systems of my miniatures just did not look good at all. So I've really been trying to rehabilitate them. And like I said, after I put them in the small orchiata bark, the roots grew a lot. But I was also having to water them a lot, like every 3 days. That's a lot of watering. So I did the same thing. I did the moss sandwich here. And look at all of the roots. It's just amazing. What I've done is there's medium orchiata bark here. There's New Zealand sphagnum moss, and then there's medium orchiata bark on the bottom layer. And that middle layer keeps everything just nice and hydrated. And here again, I don't have to use a lot of water. Once that middle moss layer is hydrated, it's just all good. I have not watered this in a week, and look at it. The roots are still good. So I really like this method that I kind of found by accident. This was serendipity this time last year because I had just run out of bark and moss to the point that I only had enough to use both in one pot. So that's what I got, and I am very pleased with the results. And I have a story to tell you all. Okay, I've taken a brief respite from repotting for the time being because the other day I repotted this. This is my Phal kaleidoscope, and I've had it in my collection for like 12 years. This one's an old timer in my collection. And so I thought, okay, it needs to be in a bigger pot. It was in just a 6-inch pot before. And I thought, this one really needs to be in a bigger pot. Last year, I placed it in medium orchiata bark. I had grown it in moss the year before. And oh goodness, the roots just, they just desiccated. It was really, really bad. I did not want to lose this Phal because I'd had it for so long. So it was in medium-sized orchiata bark for a year. Now, look at the size of this. Okay. Hang on, let me get this in your view. This is my hand, which I do have child hands, but you can tell this is a very long leaf, okay? So it went from this size leaf to this size leaf in a year. So he's very, very happy. Okay, so he needed to be in a bigger pot, and I have never seen anything like it. The roots were cemented to the bottom of the pot, like had grown into the plastic, like they do, you know, in nature on a tree. It was Oh my goodness, they were cemented. You can imagine, I was a little bit frustrated. It took me the whole afternoon. My husband kept looking at me with this look of concern on his face. He said, "How are you going to get that thing out of there?" So I soaked and I soaked. I used my fingernail and it finally just kind of popped out of the pot. It was not a pretty sight. And like I said, I told myself after that, I'm not going to repot another orchid for about a week. So I know when you all tell me about your adventures, oh yes, we're all in it together. I understand. But this is in a 9-inch pot now. And I use the medium size Orchiata bark and it's going to do fabulously well. It's just a huge orchid. It needed a bigger home. And I think he looks happy. Okay, I just showed you one of my largest orchids in my collection, and this is my smallest orchid in my collection. He's just about 2 inches tall. He is my Neophonetia falcata, and he has grown, and I am so thrilled. I bought this from Hauserman Orchids at the same time that I got my Bellina at the end of June, and he's just done so well. The symmetry of this little plant is just so charming. I just like the plant itself. The Japanese say that when you have a Neophonetia falcata, you are to appreciate it every single day, that it is a symmetry, it's a symmetry treat for the eyes, and I see what they're talking about. I just like this little plant, beautiful, but he's grown. These leaves here have grown since I've had him. He's grown these 2 leaves new. So he's done so well. In small Orchiata bark, I do water him pretty often, every other day. He gets fertilized pretty weekly at about 180 parts per million, about once a week. And then in between times, I just water him with some CalMag. And he has done really, really well. But I am quite taken by this little plant. I really like this little Neo. Just a little fun fact. The Japanese call orchids noble plants, but the Neophonetias are called the most noble plants. These were known as the samurai orchids, so it just makes them very special. It kind of reminds me of a bonsai plant. I think this is like a bonsai orchid, so I'm just quite taken by this little plant. I really do like him. And we started the video with a close-up of Magic Art, and we're going to end this video with a close-up of Phal Purple Dust. We're going to do a sandwich there too with blooms. So thank you all so much for going on this little tour discussion with me. I just wanted to show you how everything's doing after it's repotted. Even a few months after they've been repotted, it's kind of interesting to see how they've grown, how they've changed, and it's just so much fun to share that with you all. So before I end this video, I'd love to say the blessing over you, your families, and your plants. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. You all make it a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.